This is a build log of the USS Constitution hull in 1/700 scale from Turner Miniatures. I will use this model for games using our house rules based on the Black Seas rule set by Warlord Games. When I start out a new project, the first thing is always old paintings together with reading. If you are interested in the USS Constitution, then I would recommend the museum with the same name. I found a wealth of information and articles on their website. But even with this and me not being a sailor, mistakes still creep in, but this is what makes this hobby fun. I learn new techniques and also new things about the subject matter. Like the dolphin striker precluding the use of a spritzel. I always wondered how a sail like that would work on some of my earlier models built with said striker. Well, now I know, thanks to the suggestions of a gentleman over at the Naval Wargaming Historical Group on Facebook. This also led me to change it at the very end of the build. Luckily it just snapped off without damaging the yardarm and all the rigging on it. I decided on a look that she might have had at the start of the War of 1812. I found sources stating that she got her white streak instead of the earlier normal yellow ochre one for the first time in 1811. Either at a later point in the war she was actually repainted yellow ochre, maybe in an attempt at disguise, as many British frigates had this colour. I also painted the stern gallery window frames red, as this is what it seems she had at this point. For the figurehead I used a billet head, slightly enlarged to show in games. The actual part found and fitted was from a Warlord Games plastic frigate frame. I also decided I wanted to make my own masts and yardarms. For this build I used brass wire with the diameters 1.5mm, 1.0mm, 0.8mm, 0.5mm and 0 for millimeters. I really would probably have liked 1.4 instead of 1.5 and 0.6 instead of 0.5, as this has looked good in previous builds. But this is what I had at hand, and the need to create drove me to start the process even without the correct diameters. In the end I did not notice much difference, so a moot point perhaps. To these I added 3D printed fighting tops from Turner Models masts I had laying in my pile. I also used this brass sheet to cut small braces, these to hold the yardarms better in place. The yards were turned slightly, and the idea was to give the whole model a slight heel in this direction as well. I have done this on several models in the past and find that it almost always looks good, creating direction and movement in the model. The Army Painter Ash Grey Primer is what I use on most of my models. As for the other paints I use Army Painter, both the Fanatic range and some speed paints. I am also very partial to the Vallejo model color off-white. Also used are the Army Painter Quickshade tones and Vallejo washes for shading effects. The speed paints is sometimes used as the base color, thus pre-shading the model in that area somewhat. I then apply shades, wash, then mid-tones, and finally highlights using various painting techniques. The ratlins are mostly 1/500 or 1/700 scale from Atlantic models. This is photo etch railings I had left over from another build. They are from Artist Hobby and of great quality, I find. I used them as boarding netting in this build. I use a couple of different threads for the rigging. All the standing rigging is single width or double width, as in doubled and glued thread from Warlord Games. Most of the running rigging is fine EZ line. I also at times use other thread bought in various places. For this build I decided to not include a crew, this being a game piece and crew being so small in 1/700 scale that they hardly show anyway. As mentioned earlier, I learn as I go and had no clue with the spritzel going out of use with the advent of the dolphin striker. The dolphin striker is a small vertical or near vertical ancillary spar spanning between the bowsprit and martingale, for those of you who might not know it. And the spritzel is the square sail on the bowsprit. A lot of the rigging I try to follow historical paintings, but also the book, Rigging Period Ship Models by Lennart Petersson. The scale being so small, a lot is left out, but as a game piece for historical wargaming, I find this is enough. It seems I do more than most others in the same genre. This time I tried to add some more texture to my water, but on top of my normal work with transparent acrylic, painted on the bottom with semi-transparent inks and green stuff World Splash Gel on top. I tried some thicker layers of Vallejo Atlantic and Mediterranean water textures. I am not entirely happy with the result, and it won't match our favorite sea mat as well as my other ships with standard bases. But it is always nice to try new stuff, as it's the only way to learn. The sails this time around are just premium quality printing paper and watered down paint. I like the matte look this gives, but have seen others using other types of paper to great effect. The sails is definitely an area where I could spend some time and try to improve. Any tips are very welcome. Many times for more standard pieces like the third-rate HMS Minotaur I recently completed, I end up using pre-printed sails from Warlord Games. They look good and are easy to work with. So this is the finished ship after the fixes. It's my first US ship of this period. I do have a list of others from Turner models that I will make later to start a small fleet. I find the heavy frigates and razy ships the most interesting, and hence that is where I tend to spend the most time. Any questions you have on this build, please let me know in the comments below. That's the end of this build. I hope to see you all for the next one. We have a battle in our campaign coming up in the new year. Everyone is so busy, so games are far between at the moment. I also hope to make a few new ship shorts.